Hello, meat eaters. This is your favorite doctor of education. My channel is called Take the Meat, Spit Out the Bones. I'll be sharing information about education research, but I think today we're just going to leave the education research. I probably will reference reference some research in this video, but we're going to talk more about my practice, what I see, what I've heard. I'm definitely going to talk about research. Yes. So today's message in today's video, we're going to talk about why teachers hate teaching. Okay, so let me be a little bit personal. I was one of those teachers. Okay, I was one of those teachers who wanted to change the world, who was like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to save the kids. Okay, I'm going to teach them, close gaps. They're going to read at the end of the school year, and that's my mission." I was very, very, very dedicated. I'm still dedicated, which is why I'm here, right? But after that first year, I definitely did not like teaching. I was one of the folks who was just like, what is this? What did I sign up for? Okay. So these are some of the reasons why I think teachers hate teaching, but please comment below. I want to hear some of your reasons. They are underpaid. I think that has been a resonating issue that I often address in every single video. Teachers are underpaid. Oftentimes, the amount of hours you put into education, the amount of money you are spending in your classroom, it's not worth the amount of hours you are working, right? I mean, teachers are constantly working. I used to dream about lessons. I used to dream about my next day's lessons. I couldn't even get a good night's sleep, right? I used to dream about kids. The pay you are getting oftentimes does not add up, right? And you can have less education and do less work at another position. You could be sitting in your pajamas at Starbucks, coding. And these people are making 3, 4, 5 times as much as you, right? Also, they're under supported, they're under resourced. So teachers hate teaching because of these things, right? So they have to constantly spend money. They are under resourced. They, go into a classroom and then, let's just say we know a lot of teachers have sticky fingers. They go into a classroom and the library is empty. There's no books there. There's no, not this furniture was taken and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, this is your class. Oh, where's the furniture? Where's the books?" And everybody's like, "Okay, somebody took it." Right. Listen, I'm not judging, right? And also, they're underappreciated. This is a country that does not appreciate education. Yeah, this is a country that does not prioritize education, and educators are not held to a high regard. And oftentimes, people don't want to, be in a system where you're not, appreciated. And let me just tell you, this is a hard one to say. Teachers hate kids. Let me just preface this. Okay. Teachers may not hate kids going into education, but oftentimes staying in education, they don't like kids. Okay, hate may be a harsh word, but they may not like the kids after some time. And also, they may really sometimes harm kids because of that dislike. Have lower expectations for some students because of that dislike, especially students with disabilities, especially students who may not look like them, right? Other people's children. So, and that's an actual name of a very good book, Other People's Children, I think by Lisa Delpit. Please read it. So that's one research I quoted. So teachers also may not know many things about child development, right? I've had several teachers, I could tell the way they were talking about the kids. I was just like, "Oh, you probably didn't take a child development or adolescent development course," right? Sometimes in their higher education, they haven't taken those courses. And a lot of times now, teachers are going through these fast track programs. Some of the names, and oftentimes their coursework is not like before they start teaching. They don't take like a child development course or adolescent development course, and they come across kids, and they sometimes forget that they were kids or how they behaved as kids, and that can cause conflict in the classroom. Also, they don't know the curriculum. So you have to know a lot of curriculum as a teacher, right? And every single year, curriculum may change. If a new administration comes in, a new director of education, a new mayor, or a new governor, whoever, and they're like, oh, we like this university, we like this curriculum. So all of a sudden, you do all this work, right, to have all these lesson plans, all these slides, and then all of a sudden they change the curriculum, right? So that's a huge thing. And they oftentimes, we have, like I said, about my experience, we have no idea the amount of time, the amount of decision making, the amount of energy it goes into teaching. Teaching is a physically taxing job. I mean, teachers will climb ladders to put up displays so kids can see or can't see, because the display is all the way up there, and then the kids are this this high. Nobody's gonna be able to see that, but they put up tons of stuff in the classroom, right? They can lift boxes, lift kids. I mean, like it's physically taxing. You're on your feet the whole day. Oftentimes, when I was a teacher, I mean, the latest, oh my gosh, I remember the next day we had quality reviews. So I was taught from 8 to 3 or something like that, and then I stayed in that classroom until midnight, because I knew someone who's going to come visit my classroom. I need to get my assessment binder ready, right? I stayed until midnight, right? 8 a.m. to midnight. I did not know the amount of time that I will be planning and in the classroom, doing work outside the classroom. My first year of teaching, I used to, okay, Saturday I was off. Sunday, I would lesson plan the whole day, like up to 12, 14 hours for the whole week. So I was that teacher. And then of course I was in the classroom staying after school every single day, right? So it's a lot of hours that you're not getting paid for. It's a lot of energy. Also, oftentimes, teaching puts a lot of pressure on people. They have high expectations for you to move kids. You got to move them from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 to level 4, or whatever your system is. There's hyper testing, lack of resources. You end up not even teaching as much. You're classroom managing, right? Like, that's the number one element of teaching. If you can't manage your classroom, let me tell you something. It's also a huge thing. Teachers have to develop a different persona, a different self. I remember when I was take sociology in undergrad, and I remember that concept of how people develop different selves depending on who they're speaking to or who they're communicating with, right? So I have a self with my family versus a self at my job versus a self when I go work out, or a self when I go to the grocery store. Everyone in some ways have a different self, and people don't realize when they become a teacher, you have to create a different self, right? You can't be the same old person you are with your mom in the classroom. You have to have a particular teacher stance and a teacher persona, right? And sometimes people don't master that. They don't know who they are as people, because oftentimes a lot of teachers are 21, 22, 23 starting off. What do you know at 21, 22, and 23? I thought I knew it all, right? Of course not. But yeah. So you have to create a different self. The classroom management. Also, teaching is very competitive. People don't realize that teaching is very competitive, especially if one teacher gets shouted out. Oh, look at her classroom. Oh, her scores. And okay, everybody's like, oh, okay. Schools can be run like a classroom. The teachers sometimes can be acting like the kids. Trying to compete against one another. And I'm not saying I didn't do that. I am very competitive, and I certainly did do that as a teacher. Also, oftentimes teachers aren't trained and educated appropriately in the reality of schooling, and how to be successful with where they're teaching. And this is where higher ed falls short. I taught many years in higher ed. I currently also work in higher ed. And I consult, that's my main business. So if you definitely need, a consultant or a coach for your teachers, or, education leaders or superintendents or anyone, please comment on below, email me at takethemeatspitoutthebones@gmail.com. But people aren't trained and educated appropriately to teach particular populations, especially language learners, students with disabilities, students who are other people's children, such as Black folks, Latinos, Hispanics, Latinx, Chicanos, indigenous people, Native Americans, right? Like Asian populations, they're not trained appropriately. And oftentimes we can be very naive as teachers going into certain classrooms and not knowing the students that we're teaching. Also, a lot of new teachers oftentimes are just passing through education, which also turns into a very bad part about the turnover system in education. They're often, in these very fast track teaching programs, and they're not staying. And it's a stepping stone for something else. And they want to do their 2 years and they get out and they sometimes do not stay. And also, you have to know different subject areas. You know, you have to know different subject areas. You have to know different curriculum. Like, you know how to read, right? But you have to teach someone how to read. And that's a totally different thing. You may not remember how you learned how to read, right? And then also, other things, teachers have various talents, right? But you don't realize the amount of talent you need to run a classroom. You need to be an artist, you need to be a production manager, you need to be a counselor, a nurse, a therapist. Apart from teaching, you need to be somebody's mommy, somebody's daddy, somebody's everything, in that classroom. And then you're like, I didn't sign up for this. And oftentimes, like I said myself, I was just like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that in education, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change that. And when they realize that the problem with America's education system is bigger than themselves, that causes a lot of frustration. And they're like, okay, I want to go. Um, and then also too, as well, sometimes teachers may not have the great intentions going into teaching to change one's life, and the classroom at a time, and all these barriers come about in education, the education system, and it's insurmountable, right? You can't change these. And oftentimes they realize the system is created to reproduce underprivileged, the underclass of society, and that underclass remains that underclass. It doesn't matter. And then let me just tell you, one great teacher can do mountains. I remember reading another research article that said if I think a Black child has a teacher in elementary school, they have so much more. They have so much more likelihood of going to college. And I'm sure I'll make another video about that in the future. But there's tons of research out there that shows how important good teachers are. And, of course, I do not want to deter you from being in education, but then, of course, I want to tell you some of the negatives, because these are some of the reasons why teachers hate teaching. They are controlled by curriculum that is not representative of the current events, not relevant to kids. They're written by people who have no clue as to the runnings of a classroom, a school, or who may have never entered a classroom, or if they did 20 years ago or 30 years ago. They may only, curriculum may only be written by researchers and not practitioners. And then also that coincides with testing companies and in what they're testing. Who are these standards? Who are these standards for, right? Should curriculum be localized versus a national curriculum? We can debate that, right? Okay. And then oftentimes people do not agree with how schools are being run by the admin, by the education leaders in the building. And let me just say another personal thing, right? Actually, I speak to education leaders the most now. And I was, naive, new teacher, and I would blame everything on the principal. And once I started really talking to principals and seeing the bind that they're in, and let me just tell you, some decisions principals make are, definitely their fault and not some higher up, but it's yeah, it's not often the admin's fault why certain things happen in schools. So that's something too. We blame admin all the time, but there are constant changes in curriculum, schedules, the operations of the school, how it's being run. Teachers may find disagreement with that, so that ends up clouding their perspective on education and being a teacher. And then also they may not, like the admin too as well. The admin may not like them. Also, they don't know the kids they're teaching, the neighborhoods they're teaching in, the racial, ethnic group, the culture, the language. Also, too, we have to realize the majority of teachers in America are white women. And if you look at the statistics on people, actually, I should have, and I probably will right now, show you the data on how many friends whites actually have that are outside their race. So that is very important. If you're teaching in a school system and you have never really had a friend in that from the population that you're teaching, that's a little troublesome, right? So you have to think about it. How many friends do you have from other races? How many perspectives do you know, right? Like, and then the friends that you have, do they have a similar perspective of life than you, or is it different, right? Because you can, like I can have a white friend, but if we have the same type of perspective on life, you want to find someone who's a little different. You want to find, some opposing viewpoints. So that's very important. Also, I'm a coach, and I come across a lot of teachers who are stuck, right? There are a lot of teachers who are stuck, who want a way out of teaching. They see no pathway into doing another job outside the classroom. They may not have outside classroom jobs in schools. It's hard to get promoted. They may not see a way out, and because they have kids, they're married, they have a mortgage, they need health insurance, they need their pension, they need to get to 5 years to get vested, they need to get to 20 years to get the pension, right? Like you need the 10 years to get your health insurance, right? All these things factor in why people oftentimes are very bitter in education, because they don't need to be teachers, right? They need to do something else. But this they're just stuck. They're stuck, right? And of course, this is life. Life be lifing, right? Like you want a little boo, you want a little child, and all that, right? But why do I have to be in a job that I don't like anymore and be stuck, right? So why not have universal health care? Why not have a universal pension system, which is not just Social Security, because we may not have Social Security in a few years. All right. But like, so you don't lose amount of years if you wanted to change a profession or change a location or change, a position in education, or not even be in education, right? So you don't want to lose your health insurance and lose your pension because of that, right? So those are some of the reasons I have come up with, but tell me some of your reasons, right? Why you think teachers hate teaching. Oh, also, I forgot, teachers may hate the parents. Did I say that? Oh, goodness. But let me just tell you, teachers, the relationship you have with the parents will dictate how that child communicates or behaves in that classroom. So you need to make friends out of every parent. Okay. So tell me some of your reasons. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, share. All right. And I will see you for the next video. Bye.